if one's ambition is to reach many people's souls or their subconscious, to touch them, aim for the specific, not for the general.
How are you?
I am frightfully well. I'm terribly well. I'm enjoying myself.
How's the TIFF experience?
I'm enjoying it. Yes, it's so good to be in the company of people who love film, who genuinely love film, and are passionate to keep that tradition of an audience collectively in a dark room, watching and listening to a story and watching a flickering light on the screen. There's something primeval about it. There's something ancient about it. It links, I think it perhaps links to the origins of storytelling, which probably were to reassure the tiny tribe that the sun would come up in the morning, that they would not be attacked by some of the animals in the forest. Their lives were very fragile and precarious. And I think that perhaps the figure that brought explanations and comfort to the tribe was the storyteller. And I feel that the cinema, with its flickering light and its large audience, a tribal audience, if you like, is related to that. I believe that we need stories. I believe that stories are healing, as Clarissa Pinkola Estes, that wonderful authoress of Women Who Run with the Wolves. I don't know whether you've ever come across that book, but it is marvelous. It's about female mythology. But in her opening paragraph, she says, "I profoundly believe that storytelling is healing." And I still believe that.
Well, that explains the reverence that we have for artists and for storytellers and for artists, including the reverence that we have for Dali in leading up to this film. I had some knowledge of Dali's work, but not too much of his own life and his later life. And as someone who had the opportunity to portray him in this film, what is it about Dali, the man, that interested you?
I do, as well as being privileged to be a storyteller, and that's my tribal function. I also sometimes perhaps describe my acting, my work, as a portrait artist. So to create a portrait of Dalí, who himself was a great portrait artist, was tremendously exciting. It was as if I had him in my atelier, and I was glancing at him and then to my blank canvas, and then back to him and my blank canvas. I never felt that I became Dalí, but I was exhilarated and exhausted by portraying him, and I use that word as precisely as I possibly can. There's something of King Lear in him, a role that I have avoided playing. My sons always tell me I must play, but it is examining how a man, a great central figure in his tribe, but Dalí equally was a great cultural figure and an indisputable genius. How does a genius say farewell to life? I don't think Dalí, bless him, I don't think he died well.
Really?
I don't think he died at peace. I think he died raging against the coming of the dark. And I know that I was privileged to replicate the harrowing sequence when he's in the hospital in the wheelchair and surrounded by press and saying, basically saying, I mustn't die. Don't let me die. Geniuses mustn't die. That for me was a target. And I love hitting targets as an actor. Actors are also hunters. I'm grabbing at so many metaphors because, as my great colleague Tilda Swinton once said, there is so much nonsense talked about acting. It is, in fact, it's a combination of empathy and transformation. And Mary trusted me with both.
Empathy is the key word I want to take from there, because one thing is we can do with the great artists of our time is that we can have this sort of form of apotheosis with them, where we turn them into godlike figures, you know, or we turn them into figures that are infallible. And what I loved about this film and what I loved about your portrayal of Dali is that it's later in life, as he's approaching death, as his work may be immortal, but he is not. What is interesting to you about that period of Dali's life?
For an actor to embody that stage of life and that valediction, that farewell to life, is heightened by the fact that it is either King Lear, who was created by William Shakespeare, or Salvador Dali, who created himself. He created himself.
He was a creation of his own.
Of his own. He was exactly. He was a creation of his own, as titanic a creation as any of Shakespeare's characters, and I've played 17 of them. And that compulsion to express a universal condition through the prism of that very compelling personality fans out and becomes again universal. I think if one's ambition is to reach many people's souls or their subconscious, to touch them, aim for the specific, not for the general.
That's the second time I have heard that this week. We had the director Darren Aronofsky in yesterday, and he said the same thing to me. I said, what did you learn in making this film? And he said, I've learned that the most specific is the most universal. And that's so interesting in your case, as you describe yourself. I'm also hooked on the idea that you describe yourself as a portrait artist as well as an actor. That's fantastic. When did you realize that, as someone who's embodied a number of real people? Can you tell me a moment where you realized, oh, that's how I have to do this thing?
I owe an enormous debt of gratitude to Trevor Nunn, who auditioned me for the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then geniuses like Cicely Berry, John Barton, Buzz Goodbody, the great Peter Brook. And as a theatre actor, in retrospect, I realized having to bring the whole condition onto the stage and having to sustain the integrity of the event, one has to be a landscape painter, a landscape artist. Then moving from, because Richard Attenborough's son saw my Hamlet, and Richard Attenborough's son said, you've got to have that guy. So my Hamlet led to Gandhi, which is wonderful.
But I did hear that you to do Gandhi, it wasn't an easy decision for you, that you had to watch, I've heard, like countless hours and hours and hours of film before you realized you even could do it.
No, I watched countless hours. I've digressed from your question, but I will answer it. I realized that I was a portrait artist when I migrated from film to cinema. And Attenborough's description of theatre versus film is that theatre is the integrity of the event, whereas film is the integrity of the moment. And the moment being that fragile collection of seconds or minutes between action and cut. What was the other question?
Theatre is the, I'm going to stay there for a second. Theatre is the
integrity of the event.
And film is the integrity of the moment. Oh, yes, I understand that. My other question was simply, when you allow yourself to be a portrait artist like you were, and I heard that story, you watched hours and hours and hours of footage.
I had already accepted the role of Gandhi in my ignorance, and then watched 5 hours of newsreel footage in a cinema all by myself, thanks to dear Richard Attenborough, and left the cinema thinking I can't do it. I've agreed to do it. I've hugged Richard. I've said to Richard face to face in that first embrace after my makeup test, "I will not let you down, sir." And then I looked at I looked at this mountain, and my ego dissolved, and I realized I haven't got enough oxygen and I haven't got the kit. I'll never do it. And then I realized it is you don't look up and you don't look down. So many metaphors about acting. I do apologize. You're climbing a mountain. You don't look up. You don't look down. You're face to face with the rock in front of you. That's all you have.
Are you selective about the people you portray?
It's pretty random. May I quote Albert Camus?
Of course.
He described actors as haunted travelers in time pursued by souls.
Haunted travelers in time pursued by souls. Tell me what that means to you.
It means to me that I had no idea that I was going to be asked to play Gandhi. It was a shock. I had no idea that dear Buzz Goodbody, the late great Buzz Goodbody of the Royal Shakespeare Company, would say, "Ben, I want you to play Hamlet." I had no idea that Mary would say, "I would like you to portray Salvador Dali." And yet, as soon as I heard those words, there was a glimmer of recognition in me, not immodestly. I thought, all my films involving the memory of the Holocaust are very dear to me. And I felt that there is, if I may humbly offer that example of me as a storyteller being pursued by souls, insisting. And I don't wish to get too metaphysical, although I probably have, or too cosmic, but I believe there are times when somebody nudges something and a message gets through to me that I must tell their story.
In the time we have left, I just wanted to change the frame, though, because a storyteller, we've been talking about it through the lens of a gift to an audience. Then we are able to offer stories to an audience. A portrait artist, as you describe, as somebody, it is a gift to an audience to give this portrait, to give this greater depth of someone we may or may not know. What I haven't heard is what it gives you. What does acting give you?
A place to stand. Archimedes said, "Give me a place to stand and I'll move the world." And acting is how I am me.
Acting is how I am me.
Yes.
You have to explain that.
It's what I do with what I am, as the great Harriet Walter said, Dame Harriet Walter, whom I love. It's what I do with who I am. And I thank the gods that have nudged me into this rather extraordinary corner of life where, this is what I am.
It's purpose.
This is what I am.
Was it always that way when you started? Did it feel like that?
I realized that I had to be an actor when I was 4 years old.
Oh, my Lord. What happened?
I watched a film called Never Take No for an Answer.
Italian film, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
very, very good.
Thank you.
Well remembered, I mean, frightfully good.
That's the name of the show.
And it is. I remember watching this story of the orphan Italian boy whose village had been bombed by the Allies and lost everything apart from the family donkey. And he was like the little Lord Mayor of the town, the taxi driver, the haulage contractor, everything. He was adored. But his donkey was dying, and he had to get dispensation from His Holiness the Pope to demolish the wall of the St. Francis Chapel and let the donkey in to be blessed. I was in floods of tears as a little boy throughout that film, and also recognizing that that little boy was me. I wasn't an orphan, but there was something in me that was unheld, unseen, and unheard. At the end of the cinema performance in the north of England, I left shaken to the core by this odd act of mirrored recognition. And the cinema manager lifted me above the crowd of the audience and said, "It's little Peppino." I looked just like him.
Wow.
He thought I was the star of the film. And then as I was lifted above the crowd, I thought, I think this is it. I think this is it. So from the age of 4, I've been on course, veered away, of course, but that's the way, isn't it, to find your path? But yes, from the age of 4.
Well, that's beautiful. I'm getting the wrap, but I'm going to ask you one more question anyway because I'm obstinate.
Martin Scorsese gave me a copy of the film recently, and we watch it every Christmas.
What's that?
Over to you. Never take no for an answer.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Did you watch it together?
Yes, my wife and I watch it.
Wow.
And cry.
Do you still cry?
Of course we do.
And do you see like, oh yeah, I was that kid.
Yes,
back then.
yeah.
That's really beautiful.
I still look very like him.
Well, I'm obstinate, and I'll ask one last question.
Go on.
When you play someone like Dali,
There's no one like Dalí, but go on.
when you play Dali,
Thank you.
what do you take of his essence, of him, with you into the rest of your life?
Fearlessness. I think he took tremendous risks. And the great pianist Vladimir Horowitz used to warn his impresarios before every concert he said, I have to warn you, I take terrible risks. So now I would love the temerity to say that now to every director I meet who invites me to a film. I have to warn you, I take terrible risks. Because I wish to God I did take more risks as an actor. I'm too careful.
Really?
I think so. But I hope that Dali, I've just pushed the envelope a little bit more.
It's such a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you today about this, and I really
I've enjoyed it very much.
Sir Ben Kingsley, thank you so much.
My pleasure.